Okay. Hello, Beacon. It's Lee Kyriacou, the mayor. I know it's spring and it might be baseball season, but I'm actually here to talk to you about your assessments because, like most of you homeowners, my wife and I got our letter in the spring telling us what our assessment is, and the assessments go up because property values go up. And a lot of people worry at this time of year of like, oh, does that mean my taxes are going up? And it's like, not at all necessarily. And let me try to explain to you why. And that's where I'm going to use these two balls, right? There's a bigger ball and a smaller ball. And there's something you need to worry about the big ball, but mostly you need to worry about the small ball. So let me just talk you through this. First of all, why do assessments get changed every year? Well, that's because Beacon, along with most of the communities in Dutchess County, are what are called full value assessment communities. That means they try to keep the assessments close to the full market value of the property every year. So that means every year we do an adjustment to each of the properties. It's not like they're looking at each one individually, they're looking at classes of property, and I'll explain later what that means. And by staying near full value, two things happen. One, everyone's assessment is fair, right? Because you can see it's sort of not too far off from the market value, usually a little bit below that. And then second, not only is it fair, but it makes it really easy for everyone to compare their assessments and know whether theirs is somehow off. And there's a place you can go on the Dutchess County website called Parcel Access. And when you get there on the website, that's the Dutchess County website, you can look up your property and then you can click and see all the properties around on the map and see what they're assessed at. And that gives you a sense of what your assessment is relative to your neighbors, and it's a way to understand whether you should be coming in and talking to the assessor about changing the assessment of your property, because it builds the facts that you need to make that decision. So that's why Beacon stays at full value, because it's fair and it's easier for everyone to see, and it minimizes the number of disagreements that we have. So that's why you get the letter. I got the same letter you did. And my wife and I took a look at the letter, and it said that our property went up a lot. And your first reaction is to worry. The rest of the letter says, please note the average overall residential increase was approximately 10%. So the first thing I do with this ball, which is the total assessment base of Beacon, including our house, right? It's one of the little pieces of this ball, went up, it turns out, 10%. So our property was assessed 10% higher. I have to do the math. And by the way, it says that the average home also was assessed upward 10%. Okay? So that's telling you something, because the first thing you got to do is look at your letter and make a decision, or understand your increase, if it is, relative to all the other properties. Because what you want is you want the same portion of this ball to be what you're paying before. So if residential properties all went up 10% and yours went up less than 10%, what that means is you're a smaller piece of this assessment base. And that means you're going to actually get a smaller share of the taxes. And we'll get to that when we talk about the other ball. If it's at 10%, just like our home was, that means that our piece of this big ball, which is almost $2 billion now, just to give you a sense of the size of it, didn't change. So we're not going to get an increased tax because of our assessments. Might be for a different reason, but not because of the assessments. And then finally, if it's over 10% relative to this number that the average for residential properties was 10, you're probably going to get a little bit bigger piece of this ball, right? So let's talk about the other ball, which is the one that sets the taxes. So this ball here is the assessment base. And as I mentioned, it's getting close to almost $2 billion in Beacon. That's a really, really, really good thing for property owners, right? It means that the value of our homes are increasing. And just because they went up on average 10% doesn't mean your taxes are going up. Again, based on this assessment, that's the assessment you're doing of how much of this ball is my house relative to everybody else. And then the second ball you got to look at, the other one, right? And yeah, these are my old balls that I still have in the house. Apparently softballs are yellow now, or greenish yellow. Is the tax levy. The tax levy is the total amount that the city of Beacon assesses on the assessment base, okay? And so our tax levy in 2023 was $12.5 million on a base of 1.7, almost $1.8 billion. That's a B for billion, right? The general fund was 24 million, almost 25 million. But only half of that was funded by property taxes because we had other sources of revenue. A new piece kicked in this year, which was sales tax revenue, which went up a lot because I personally helped negotiate the sales tax deal with the county, and we have that benefit. So let me tell you how, even though there was a substantial increase in the assessment base last year, this ball for resis are up, residential properties are up 10% this year. Last year, it was up 15%, okay? And you're thinking, oh my goodness, that's a big number. Your property values are up that high. That's a good thing. Let me put this ball down, right? In the general fund, our total budget, this is what the city is spending this year, was up 5%. 5% is not surprising given inflation in the country was higher than that, right? So we actually kept our spend around 5% increase, right? The tax levy, the $12.5 million that's in this year's budget, went up less than 2%, okay? So inflation is around 5%. Our total expenses are around 5%. The tax levy, this number here, went up only 2%, all right? And that's because I make it a point of not increasing our taxes any more than we absolutely have to. Now, you ask this question, well, you raised it 2%. Let me tell you what this 2% represents. Of this 15% increase in the assessment base, fully almost 2% of it was from new construction, meaning those buildings going up around that you're thinking, oh, that's interesting. Well, those new buildings are adding to this base and helping us have a bigger ball for assessment and therefore keeping our taxes, the existing homeowners, lower. So about 2% of this 15 was new construction, which is what we limited the tax levy to. So for this year, the tax levy to existing homeowners went up 0, okay? Now these are average numbers. It doesn't mean it works for every single property, but on average, across the city, we kept this limited to new construction. There is a state property tax cap. This year, the property tax cap, the limit that the state says you shouldn't raise among, was 5. We didn't choose to go to 5. Again, I've been working with the city administrator and our finance director and the city council. We work to keep our tax rate increases low. So under 2% increase, but wait, this one up 15. How does that work itself out? That's the last number. So the tax rate it's in an unusual metric. It's in terms of dollars per $1,000 of assessment, okay? You can also think about it as a percentage of your property value. Last year, meaning this year, 2023, it was $6.20 per $1,000 of assessed value, which is about 0.6%. That dropped 11%, and that's how these numbers foot. The assessment, the big ball, which I've now started to erase apparently. Oh, I can't get it back in. But the big ball went up about 15%, 2% from new construction. We increased the levy by 2%, keeping way below our expenses because we figured out how to save some money. And the tax rate dropped 11. And that's going to happen again this year. So let's say this year, the overall size of the big ball goes up another 10%. We're going to keep, I can assure you, the budget that the mayor is going to propose is going to keep this ball, the size of the tax levy, at a lower rate, a couple of percent. It might have to be more. We can't do that every year when inflation is growing at the numbers that it's growing. But it'll be something modest. And the difference between the two, say that average is 10%, say we raise taxes 3, 4, something under inflation, will be reflected in a lower tax rate. This rate here has been falling for almost 10 years now, in part because our property values are increasing and also we're getting new construction to help increase the size of the tax base. So, to summarize, when you get your letter and you're worried, is it going to increase my taxes, take a look at the percentage change of the assessment of your property. It's going to tell you the dollar change. You'll have to calculate the percent. And ask the question, higher than 10%, lower than 10%. then you'll know whether you're getting a bigger piece of this ball or not. If it's at 10, you're doing fine. And then the only other number to worry about is what the mayor and the council do with the tax levy in the fall for the new for the new year for our spending. That's all I got. I want to encourage people to understand their taxes, their assessments. There is a grievance day. It's coming up. Grievance day, if you don't agree with your assessment, is May 24th. There's 2 sets of times, 2 to 4 in the afternoon and 6 to 8. There's a number to call if you want to talk to your assessor. And remember, you can go on Dutchess County Parcel Access and look at your property, look at your assessment, look at the adjoining parcels. If you do want to get a hold of the assessor, it's 838-5025. And I just want to thank you all for helping advance the ball in the city of Beacon. Thank you.